a lot of those children will spend lots and lots of time in hospital. So as Merel said, those children will miss an awful lot of school. And so they miss out on all that socialisation with their peers, which is really, really important to emotional development, social development.
Welcome to Inspiring Voices, the podcast of the Sing Up Foundation. We believe in harnessing the power of singing to improve mental health and well-being for children and young people. I'm Celi Barberia.
And I'm Chapman. In this series, we've paired guests from different areas of research, practice and strategy to make connections and to understand more deeply the unique role of singing, songwriting and creative music making in transforming children and young people's mental health and well-being.
This second series focuses particularly on how we can inspire young voices, and especially on how children and young people who have particular challenges in their lives that can affect their mental health can be supported through singing and music making. Inspiring Voices, the podcast of the Sing Up Foundation.
Please remember to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. It really will help us to get the word out. Thanks for listening, and now on with the show. For this episode of Inspiring Voices, we're chatting with Sally Spencer and Merel van der Knoop. Sally is the Leukemia Advanced Nurse Practitioner at Birmingham Children's Hospital. She also sings with Birmingham choir ExCathedra and is a lead tutor for its education team. She was co-creator of the award-winning project Singing Medicine, which brings the joy of singing and singing play to children and adults in healthcare settings, not least in Birmingham Children's Hospital, where the project has been running for an amazing 20 years. Merel is a freelance vocal coach and accompanist and singing and piano tutor, as well as being an actor and choral conductor. She is musical director of the Long COVID Choir and Long COVID Kids Choir and is herself living with long COVID. So welcome, both of you. And Sally, perhaps I can come to you first to ask you to tell us a little bit more about Singing Medicine.
To be honest, Baz, I think you did it all in the introduction. So Singing Medicine's been going for about 20 years. And 20 years ago, I had this little idea that the education projects that were being delivered by ExCathedra in schools very successfully could perhaps in some way be given to the children in hospital. I felt very strongly that children were missing out on the opportunities that they would normally get in school. So I had a little chat with a few people and we put together, I think initially a series of about 6 days where we thought we'd go in and do some singing games with children around the wards. And 20 years later, here we are still. So yeah, it's very much one-to-one or very small groups of children rather than big groups. We do work with adults as well. That tends to be more in groups. We work specifically with adults who've had stroke and dementia. And we work in various hospitals. As you said, Birmingham Children's is our primary hospital, but we have worked in lots of different hospitals around the country.
And what is it that keeps you doing it?
Oh, it's just amazing. It's I think it's lovely to see children who are having a really, really tough time in hospital and they are being done to all the time. They have very little choice in what happens to them. And we can go in, sit with them by their bed or in their room, and we can just sing and play some games and just take them away from that, even if it's for 5 minutes. It's also fantastic for the parents. They can either join in or they can take the opportunity to have a little break. And I think for me as a nurse, I work with children with cancer. So in my nursing job, I very much have to sit with that and be with the families in that. But on a Friday, I must admit, I don't sing with my patients because that would feel very strange. But on a Friday, I can go to other areas of the hospital and just have a really nice time singing, which is something that I love doing.
Yeah, fab. Merel, tell us about the Long COVID choirs.
Yes, so I run 2 choirs. One is the Long COVID choir, which is for adults. That actually was started back in 2021 by a lady called Claire Hasty. And I originally actually participated in this choir back in, I think, 2022. And then they needed someone actually to lead it. So I thought I might try it. Coming from like a choir background, but not really being able to do my work as I used to because of long COVID. And I've been running it ever since, really. And then the long COVID kids choir, actually the idea came to me in, I think, spring term 2022, when I was really very ill with long COVID and I couldn't work at all. And I was following like Instagram posts and of a charity called Long COVID Kids, and it just really struck me how those children were suffering so much and didn't really have much help at all. And then sort of coming from that singing background and vocal coaching, I sort of knew or had sort of experienced how important that sort of aspect can be of like coming together to sing. So I decided to start a long COVID kids choir, an online choir, and we run the sessions every week on a Sunday afternoon.
Right. It's interesting. I know obviously long COVID is different from COVID, but it seems to be a thing that one associates with isolation, doesn't it? So did you see some particular effects from it being something that actually brings people together?
Yeah, absolutely. You're feeling safe. And it actually builds confidence as well, knowing that you're together with people who understand what you might be going through, and that having that support and feedback as well. We now have I added an extra 5 to 10 minutes onto the session because I could feel that I sensed that they really wanted to chat as well.
Yeah. How do you see these kinds of life-limiting conditions impacting on young people's mental health? Merel, maybe with long COVID first, and then we'll come to you, Celi.
Yeah, absolutely. From what the feedback that I'm getting, and also sort of what I'm seeing in my own experience, is incredibly isolating, which of course can have like a domino effect in terms of depression, especially. And I think, that coming together with the singing just sort of lifts it up a lot. And also being together with children of similar age as well, because I really noticed that they really needed to chat to children who are sort of going through the same age transition, if you could call it like that. Just sort of they're missing out on that so much because they're not going into school.
Celi, you're working on wards where young people are, I would imagine, particularly struggling from a mental health point of view. How do you see that sort of manifesting itself?
I think, as I said, I look after children with cancer in my nursing job. And a lot of those children will spend lots and lots of time in hospital. It may be sort of a few days very regularly. It may be 6 months at a time. It may be even longer. So, as Merel said, those children will miss an awful lot of school. And so they miss out on all that socialisation with their peers, which is really, really important to emotional development, social development. I think we have quite a lot of teenagers and young people who, and it's really hard for them, because I think at that age, when you get to your teenage years, you expect to be seeing much less of your parents and perhaps becoming more independent and going out with your friends. And then those children or young people suddenly find themselves with their mum and dad or, guardian, whoever it is, 24/7. And that can be really hard. So I think mental health is a big problem, and it's not just with children with cancer. It's all over the hospital. Children are in those situations.
And apart, obviously, we'll come on to talk about how singing can be a benefit there. But what other mechanisms are there to look after those more likely to be acute issues around mental health?
We have psychologists who will work with children. We have play specialists who work with children. There is a school within the hospital, so children will have lessons with teachers, and all of those things, particularly the school, is to try and give some sense of normality to what is a very difficult life. So there are lots of things in place. I think some of those can be hard to access at times, and children will end up spending most of their time either with their parents or their nurses and doctors and other healthcare professionals.
And Merel, I wonder, because so many people with long COVID have to fight so hard for the kind of recognition that long COVID is a thing and that their illness is real, because it seems like, once if you've got cancer or you're already in hospital, it's like there's already an acknowledgement of the things that need to be healed or need to be worked on, whereas long COVID, it seems like that's a bit more nebulous sometimes.
That's a really good point you're making, actually. I think that sort of shows itself in lots of anxiety, and that feeling of not being understood or being misunderstood, and losing that confidence that you might have had in yourself. And losing also the confidence or trust in the people around you. Maybe not necessarily your immediate family, parents or carers, but the system around it, school sometimes even, or health services. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's, I think, why the choir is such a lovely thing for them, because they really feel understood and valued.
Merel, are you happy just to share with us what your experiences of long COVID have been? Because I think certainly for me, it's something I feel like I still don't know very much about it. It's almost like society seems to be hiding it away.
Yeah, absolutely true. I think the difficult thing about long COVID is it's an umbrella term for lots and lots of symptoms. And so even if it might look that we all have the same thing because it's all called long COVID, and we might have similar symptoms, but the underlying issue might not actually be the same thing. So just personally for me, one of the things I had definitely was dysfunctional breathing, which was a result of cardiovascular issues that I got through long COVID. So I had 5 months of breathing rehabilitation, where we did lots of breathing exercises, which were very similar to what I would be doing anyway in my own singing practice. But just getting that from someone else and who really tailors it towards what you need was incredibly helpful. And I think also just gave me even more understanding and perhaps patience towards others as well. And sort of being able to take that step back and not pushing or anything, and just sort of, where we are, and just really gently encouraging.
Yeah. What have you found have been some of the physical benefits of singing for helping with long COVID?
Definitely the feeling or the reduction of having that constant stress feeling in your body. With long COVID, especially for me, then at least in the beginning of being ill, I felt I was constantly in this fight or flight mode, which is really odd because I really was not like that at all. I mean, I used to do skydiving and stuff like that, and that didn't really bother me. But now I was constantly on edge. And I really feel that the singing and the breathing and being in a calm space, calm, safe space really helped to calm it down a lot. And I can also see it with the children in the choir, and even with the adults as well. Just having that moment, and sort of that regular moment every week, and sort of then being able to maybe sometimes go back to exercises that we were doing in the sessions.
Yeah.
And the range of sort of symptoms are broad, aren't they? I mean, from chronic fatigue to breathing to, really, really broad range.
Extremely. Yeah. And that also sometimes might make it a bit tricky. Not tricky, but because I was thinking about this before we had the conversation. And because in the sessions, as I said, maybe we show similar symptoms, but they come from different issues in the bodies. So with a certain exercise, we do one exercise, but we have to tailor it almost to everyone's needs. So I always say, listen to your own body. If you don't want to continue the exercise, then you just stop. can you take a break? So yeah, make it adaptable for everyone.
Celi, just on that point about the sort of physical things that young people might be dealing with, do you find with singing medicine that there's sometimes a role for singing to actually help with whatever those long-term conditions are, sort of outside of the mental health and wellbeing aspect?
Yeah, very much so. And we've actually developed quite good relationships with staff in the hospital. So, for example, the physios will ask us to do specific things for children. So, you know, if they want them to get something particular moving, I don't know, their hands or something, we can bring some games in which will make them use their hands or their arm or whatever it is. And we've also done some work around lung function, which obviously probably fits in quite nicely with what you do as well, Merel. So we have created lots of games which involve, for example, blowing through straws and, you know, playing kazoos and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we know that singing helps your breathing, and it also aids healing. So it very, very much the physical side of things is there. I would say, though, that when singing medicine started, it was definitely, we do not call ourselves a therapy. However, we know there are many therapeutic benefits.
Yeah, I was actually wondering whether you've noticed, like, has there been a change over time, the way you're sort of working? Because it's quite a long period of time, that's 20 years, and if your focus has changed, or...
We've certainly learnt an awful lot as we've gone along. I think we are quite good as a team. We're a team of about 20. I think it's a great testament that most of that team has been there since we started, but we also have newer people in the team. And one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on, I guess, is that we write most of our own songs, and a lot of our songs will come from, you know, a conversation. Oh, I saw this child on ward, whatever. They're really into playing football. We need to write a song about football. So we'll be constantly evolving and constantly finding new ways to engage children, and our each individual session will be that as well. So we'll go into a room not knowing whether this child is going to be 2 or 12, and we very quickly sort of say, okay, well, that's obviously a roughly 2-year-old. What are they into? What's around the room? We do use some instruments, but we can't take anything in that's not wipeable. So it all has to, for infection control purposes. So we tend to use whatever is in that child's bed space. So they might have a teddy, or they might have a car, and we'll say, right, okay, well, he's got a car, let's sing a song about a car. So yeah, it's developed a lot over the 20 years, and our repertoire is always developing.
I've had the amazing privilege of touring the wards, mostly as an observer with the singing medicine team. And what really struck me is that it's not just that ability to sort of flex to the situation. It's the fact that you're all like really good singers, and you will spontaneously create things and harmonize. And for someone, you know, for whom they'd stuck in a bed, that experience of being sung to and with by a professional is really amazing. Seeing their reactions was fascinating. You know, you could just do a doctorate studying the reactions to people coming and singing with you. Yeah,
I mean, it is lovely, and we get lots of lovely comments about our singing. And in fact, one of the chaplains at the hospital the other day, we were singing on the neonatal ward, so very tiny babies. So it's generally singing lullabies, and we often do stuff in harmony. And I suddenly heard this male voice behind us, and it was the chaplain who was sitting in the chair. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, do you need to be doing something with this patient?" He said, "No, I just want to hear you sing."
Oh.
And it was really lovely. So they, you know, it is lovely, and parents really appreciate it too.
When when my son had quite a pretty bad burns accident when he was 11 months old, and we spent quite some time in the ICU burns unit. And when he used to have his dressings changed, we would always sing to him, and it did actually calm him down while all the pain of the dressing changes and everything were happy, it helped to calm him down. And we just did that because we sang a lot at home anyway. But it was interesting that sort of the nurses noticed, what a difference it made, and that we felt like it was something we were sharing with him too, and that it helped us all in that very difficult moment.
I think that's really important, and I think one of the really difficult things for parents when they've got a child in hospital for any length of time really is that sometimes there's almost this need to learn how to communicate with their child again in this environment. So you may have a child who's normally really active, plays a lot of sport or likes to go to the park, and then suddenly they're in this bed and they can't move. And I think a lot of parents, just beyond giving them a screen, don't really know what to do with that. So that's where we can help a little bit by going in, doing some games, and obviously we can leave those games in the parent's mind and show them that they can still have fun with their child in the confines of the space that they're in at that time.
Yeah.
Focusing a bit more on the mental health aspects, are there any sort of things that you see commonly as a way that singing seems to have an impact on the mental health and well-being of the young people you're working with?
What I've noticed in the sessions is that because of the songs that we sing, which is a combination of being chosen by myself and suggestions from the kids who attend the choir, it then sort of opens up a conversation in which they can sort of then express how they're feeling if they want to.
What sort of things do they talk about?
Sometimes it's really varied, really. Sometimes it's really long COVID and sort of the symptoms that they're experiencing, but also worries about, attending school again, maybe for an hour a day, and how that might go, and are there stairs, and what do I do if there are people behind me, for example, that want to go faster than I'm going, and then the others can jump in with feedback on that and support.
Yeah. Okay.
And also just really more sort of maybe general stuff, like they play Minecraft a lot, so they talk about Minecraft.
Yeah.
So just also to have that sense of normality, because it's not always fun to always talk about the long COVID, because you sort of also want to leave it behind sometimes, not think about it, and that's also possible in that space.
Yeah. And do you collect any more sort of formal feedback or evaluation about the benefit that the choir is having?
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually something that came up recently with feedback of one of the parents, which I thought was really actually something that I hadn't heard yet before, but it was it had to do with the fact that they were waiting for a referral to mental health services. And in that time that they were waiting, they started joining the choir. So the choir really sort of filled the gap. And then when they eventually were able to be seen by mental health services, they actually were able to say, well, actually, we're doing that in choir. And we've been doing this breathing exercises. And and they were told to keep on doing it.
Inspiring Voices. Interlude.
Introducing SingUp's brand new Play Recorder resource, included with SingUp membership. Play Recorder takes children on a learning journey from complete beginners to recorder ambassadors. This is not like any recorder resources you've encountered before. It's all about learning to love the instrument and making a beautiful ensemble sound. We've created 3 12-lesson teaching units for years 3 and 4, complete with pupil-facing videos and PowerPoints, printable resources, and detailed teaching notes. Each unit is based on an original piece of music written by professional recorder specialists with differentiated playing parts for pupils. Children will explore the trails of an enchanted forest, do battle with dream monsters, and voyage through the depths of space. To discover the resources, visit singup.org/play recorder.
on with the show.
That sort of brings me on to the other thing I was interested to find out, which is that I mean, interestingly, singing medicine is actually described as medicine. What's the relationship that you found with the work that you do and the kind of more formal aspects of the healthcare system? What kind of inroads have you managed to make in terms of demonstrating that singing is maybe more than a nice to have?
Yeah, I think we do describe ourselves as singing medicine, and actually we've had lots of parents who say this is the best medicine, this is better than all the drugs. But I think we work very carefully around the hospital, and I think we've been successful because of our care, and we respect that we are an important service, but we're not an essential service. So obviously anything that healthcare related that needs to happen when we're there obviously takes priority. So we will have sessions where we do need to be interrupted and we need to leave because something more important health-wise needs to happen. But actually the flip side of that is that a lot of time, a doctor or somebody will come in and will say, oh, do you need us to go? No, carry on, you're more important, we can wait. So I think it's been a very long process of establishing trust with the healthcare professionals around the hospital, and we are very fastidious, I suppose is the word, about our processes and procedures in terms of infection control. Obviously, we go around the whole hospital, so we have to behave in the way that healthcare professionals do in terms of ensuring that we're not spreading infection around the hospital as we go.
Yeah, but are there some success stories where maybe the system has been proactive in saying, how can we involve you in this because we see the benefit?
I can think of one immediately, which wasn't very long ago. A few months ago, we were asked. We sing to patients in intensive care every week, and so the nurses know us very well, and a lot of the patients are there for a really long time, so they and their families get to know us very well. And there was a situation with a young child. She was probably only about 2 or 3, who was coming to the end of her life, and intensive care staff were arranging a memory making session. We have a completely separate building called Magnolia House in the hospital, which can be used for more informal kind of family time. It's sort of a home in the hospital, if you like. And we were asked as a team to attend that memory making session, which we did. I wasn't there personally, but some of the team were there. And there were about 40 relatives, I gather, so it was enormous. The team started singing. There were quite a lot of young children relatives, so the team started singing with them, but it all got quite noisy. So they weren't asked. I think the vocal tutors just read the room and thought, actually, we just need to calm this down. So they started doing some much calmer stuff. And one of the ITU nurses said afterwards, that was amazing. You just kept everybody really calm. It was really lovely. And because it was so calm, the child who was very unwell and coming to the end of her life was stable. I think there was a risk with all the excitement that she might become physically unstable, but they believed very strongly that the calmness that singing medicine brought enabled them to stay at Magnolia House for longer, and to really appreciate that session.
Wow. Merel, what's your relationship with the sort of the healthcare system, if any, and have you got that sort of similar thing of people? Has the system sort of recognised what you're doing in a more formal way?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'd love to do so because this is definitely something on my list, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'd love to be on the social prescribing list, or required to be on the social list, and one of the ideas I had as well, I'd love to create a similar program, for example, to the ENO Breathe, but then for children.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be really beneficial, because I do feel that although the choir is amazing and nothing bad about the choir, but I do feel that sometimes children can be a little bit hesitant joining a choir, whereas maybe having a program more sort of, that's sort of similar to, Breathe, it just might make it less sort of scary or formal.
Yeah, because there are, I think the last ONS report came out, said that there are now 112,000 children in the UK with long COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm sure not 112,000 children are on your choir. And it seems like, from what you're saying, it'd be great if there was a program that kind of felt like it was part of their treatment, that
exactly
kind of would allow them to partake in singing experiences.
Exactly. I think you put it exactly the way I wanted to share it. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I do feel that there's although there's not an awful lot out there for adults, there's definitely more out there than for children.
Merel, can I ask you how many children you have in your choir?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got about 15. Sort of not everyone always comes to the session. It really depends on the energy levels. And some of them have been coming from the beginning. So we've got sort of a core group.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just on that energy levels, do you find that singing can affect energy levels? Can it in a positive way?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's this threshold, and you have to be really careful that if you are too energized or uplifted, you can crash. So you're constantly balancing. So even with the choir, they really have to be mindful of okay, maybe we'll join in with this, but then have a little rest so that we still have the energy and we feel uplifted, but we don't feel that we're going to crash.
Is that similar for you, Sally? Are you kind of aware of energy levels?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, a session for us might last half an hour. It might last 2 minutes. And either is fine. It's about reading the room and seeing what that patient needs or wants. So yeah.
Yeah.
But we do find quite a lot, as you said, Merel, that it is energizing, very much so.
Yeah.
But we obviously have to be very aware, as you do, that we mustn't tire children out too much. So we might do something really fun and crazy, and then calm it down with something else, and then maybe do something fun and crazy again, and do something a bit calmer. So it's just about seeing how that child is doing. And we will always say at the end of a song, the end of the song is really when they decide the end of the song is, but then we will often say, would you like to do another one, or shall we go? And it's just as simple as that. It's completely their choice. So they can decide whether they've had enough or when they've had enough.
That's really nice, isn't it? Because it really gives them the child, like that they are in control. Almost.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, when already you're being
and that's kind of the point. They're in control of the whole session. They're in control of whether they want us to sing at all. We will go in and say, would you like to play some singing games with us? No, thank you. Well, that's fine. And they've had the control to say, no, actually, I don't want to sing with you. And that's a really powerful thing. And most of our songs are designed so that they get control of what happens in the song. And then they've got control of when we finish, and they get a sticker.
So it really gives them a voice.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Well, there's a lot of research that points to the value of agency for helping to improve mental health and wellbeing, particularly for those who, like you said, Sally, feel like they've been done to, where they have so little control of nice things. So that, I guess that's clearly kind of in your thinking about offering that creative potential.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. As I said, our songs will almost always have choices. So, for example, we've got a song about animals who can do tricks. So the the child will choose what animal, they'll choose the name of the animal, and they'll choose what tricks the animal can do. And then, that will build up the song. Then we'll sing the song. We'll say, okay, well, what animal do you want next? So it's all about what they want. And obviously we involve any siblings and parents and nurses, if they happen to be hanging around, get collared as well, which the children really like. They like to see, those healthcare professionals putting themselves out there and being a bit silly.
Merel, with a choir, obviously you haven't got perhaps quite the same degree of flexibility as you might if you were doing a game. So how do you kind of handle repertoire and planning and managing your rehearsals?
We do it's a combination of sort of. I do prepare the sessions, but it's flexible. So if I notice or sense from what's happening in the chat, for example, that it would be better to maybe sing along to a different song, then I'll just, I'll go away from what I had planned, and we go with that. And or sometimes I suggest or open the floor and ask them, so what would you like to do now? And similarly to like vocal exercises, or we sometimes, we take a word and then we turn it into a tongue twister, or so they're very much, again, in control, or not in control, but like that they have their voice to make the session that they would like to have it, really.
So Merel, sorry, I was just going to ask, you mentioned the chat. So does all of that decision making happen on the chat rather than verbally?
It depends on the child, really. Some of them are feel more comfortable just putting it in the chat, although they know each other really well by now. But others love to unmute and chat.
I'm slightly in awe of you being able to lead a session and monitor the chat at the same time. That's a skill.
I have to say that now there are more, and they do use the chat a lot more. It's sometimes a challenge.
Yeah,
but I do have to say, okay, maybe now let's just focus on the singing. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because as a singing leader, we're always sort of encouraged to sort of, it's not quite a role, portraying a role, but if you're feeling exhausted, and I assume that you do, you are at risk potentially, Merel, of fatigue when you're running those sessions yourself. Do you put on your persona of everything's fine, or are you a bit more kind of vulnerable, would you say, in those sessions?
I would say that at the start, when I just first started running it, I probably was a little bit more, don't want to use the word professional, but I think I used to hide it a bit more. But because I know them so well now, I do sometimes not necessarily talk about my own issues, but there is a sense of like that I could share something if I wanted to, or sometimes I would say like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit on the low energy today, so I'm keeping things a little bit calmer, for example, or we might not spend so much time doing this, and they all understand.
I think that's great that actually they're seeing an adult who is in charge of the session, but acknowledging that it's hard. Really great.
And Sally, I wonder, in the same sort of vein, how do you deal with your own emotions if they ever arise in quite tough situations that you get in? I know you're a nurse, so you have that, that training as well. But as a vocal leader,
we are very much a team. We always work in at least pairs, so we're never on our own, and that's for two reasons, really. Firstly, it's much easier to run a session if you can bounce off each other, and it can be one person can be leading the song and the other person is kind of reading the room and thinking, what should we sing next? But as you said, sometimes we do come across really distressing situations. As you said, I'm a nurse, so I'm probably a bit more used to it, and a lot of the vocal tutors now have been doing this for a very long time, but we do try and really look after each other, and we have a policy: if you're struggling with something, step away, have some time out, you'll leave the other vocal tutor there, and then you can resume afterwards. And we also try and catch up throughout the day. So we get together first thing in the morning, at lunchtime, and at the end of the day, so we can talk about what's been really great, what was difficult, and we kind of debrief and support each other from that. And we also run some training days around resilience and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thinking about those young people, sort of maybe in their interaction back in the wider world, either if they're living with a long-term condition where they're connecting in with singing provision, or whether they've actually sort of come out from a period of being hospitalised. Are there any tips that you could share, either perhaps for parents and carers or indeed for teachers, that might give them some help on what kinds of singing activity might really help that young person to feel like they're still kind of part of things, and can feel something that's uplifting?
I think that the main thing that we say to parents and carers in hospital is you don't need to be able to be an amazing singer to sing with anybody. And I think a lot of, when we turn up and go, come on, sing this with me, a lot of parents will just go, whoa, I don't sing, I can't sing. And actually, I think what we show them is that it's not so much about the singing, it's the interaction and it's the time. We have lots of, we're lucky because we do now have lots of resources that we can leave with parents to help them to do that. But it is a really hard one because singing does make you vulnerable. It's something that a lot of people find very frightening because it's not like playing an instrument. It's you. It's almost sort of bearing your soul, isn't it? So a lot of people find that very difficult. But I think we just try and bring it down to this is about playing with your child. It's not about performing.
But this sort of reminds me a little bit of what we sometimes do in choirs is during the session, I would share the links to the songs that we've been singing so that they can access it in their own time later on, which they do. So sometimes it's just nice to come back to something that you've done in the session, but you do it in your own time, and you can stop the video for a while and do something else, perhaps, or have a rest. And so that sort of continues throughout the week.
Yeah. Both of you work with adults as well as young people. Are there any kind of additional insights about how singing can have an impact for sort of whatever age group?
As a result of singing medicine with children, we became involved in a fairly long project in Solihull working with adults on a stroke ward, and it was just amazing. It was lovely. But we learned very, very quickly that actually what works for a 4-year-old can also work very well for a 94-year-old. So a lot of the repertoire that we use is very similar. We might use it in slightly different ways. But I think, but particularly with patients with stroke, adults with stroke, we really noticed very quickly that a lot of patients who have had a stroke may not be able to say anything, but they might be able to sing it. So we would always start a session with a hello song, so everybody gets the opportunity to sing their name. And it's astonishing seeing somebody who you've tried to chat to before who cannot get one word out, and then they'll be able to say, "My name's Sally," and whoa, where did that come from? And it's because, as I'm sure we're all aware, that singing uses the brain in a different way and it engages both sides of the brain. So that was amazing. So there's so many benefits, and we're now doing singing medicine in hospitals for adults sort of all around the country, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Merel, what about you?
Quite similar to what Sally mentioned, actually. At first I thought, I do have to do different things. But actually, the adult group really loves the exercises that I do with the kids. Absolutely fine. Sometimes I adapt it a bit. But in general, it's all the same, really. Sometimes we come together as well, so we record songs together. And that works quite nicely as well. Or we have a session together for Christmas, for example. And it's much more overlapping than I think I realised at first.
When we do sing medicine with adults, we have a circle in a room, so they're there for an hour. And what is lovely is seeing patients who have sat in their bed space, not, with their invisible walls, suddenly sitting, chatting and making friends and having lunch together afterwards. And it just, from a social point of view, it's really special and I think very important.
Can you just say a little bit more about some of the skills that you might use in a session with that? Because I think some of those are sort of replicable, like about the technical aspects of how you teach a song in an instant to a group like that.
So we don't really teach it. We teach it by stealth, really. So we will, rather than saying I'm going to sing a line and then you're going to sing a line, we'll sing a song which involves some choices. We'll ask them to make those choices. We'll sing that song with their choices. And then we might say, okay, I want you to join in with this particular bit of the song. So you'll give them a job to do, singing one line. And then, the next time you'll say, okay, well, I want you to put in this bit as well now. So gradually you just build up the song, and it's not, I'm sitting teaching you this song. You're just picking it up because we're doing it so many times. But the song changes every time because somebody else chooses something else. So it just kind of osmosis almost, I guess.
Do you want to say a bit about the sort of off we go technique?
Oh, okay. Yes. So one of my bugbears in life is when you hear people say 1, 2, 3, 4, happy birthday to you. I mean, that's wrong for a start, but what does 1, 2, 3, 4 mean? So rather than using numbers or saying go, we will sing it. If I'm singing There Was a Lonely Dinosaur, I will start by going, off we go, there was a lonely dinosaur. So you're giving them, within that off we go, we're giving them the pulse, we're giving them the keynote, the note that they're going to start on, so they know where they're going. And actually that's one of our stealth mechanisms, particularly with children. We'll say, oh, I'm not very good at the off we goes, could you do it for me? And they'll go, oh yeah, I can do that. And suddenly they'll be singing, having gone, I don't sing.
Yeah,
it's so inspiring to hear. And I think listening to Sally, again, quite a few things overlap, but that's really because I've learned over time that we don't need to actually do a song from the beginning to the end. We can actually just take a small part of it. And that's been really, because I think, even though I would have rather not have been in the situation with the long COVID myself, but I do feel that has made me much more creative as a choir leader and as a musician, for sure. So now what I often do is take just a small chunk of the song and then I do harmonization with it. So I record different parts so that they then have an option to sing whatever part they like to sing along to. And then the next time we might actually we might sing the whole song, but you just sort of vary it a bit.
We had a really interesting conversation this morning about sort of non-vocal, like young people who aren't making sort of vocal sounds, and the power of being able to make any sound, regardless of whether or not it's words or lyrics or whatever it is. I wonder how that feeds into the work that you guys do with the young people you work with.
Yeah, we will incorporate that into songs a lot. Actually, obviously, we work with a lot of children who are non-verbal. So we have various songs designed just to put your own sounds into it. And the other thing is looking at actions, can they blink? Can they stick out their tongue? Can they wiggle their tongue? So we'll do songs around that kind of thing as well, rather than actual words.
Yeah. Again, a bit similar to what we do in the sessions as well. But I always invite them to, if they're too tired to sing the words, just hum it or sing it on a vowel, or just listen, really. And we also started using Makaton just to give them another option to sing, just a different way of singing, I guess, using the hands.
Great.
I guess that's quite good, Merel, if they just need a bit of a break, but they can still feel included, can't they, if they're using their Makaton?
Exactly.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking a huge step sort of back and away from this and looking at the whole thing of young people with major health and often long-term health conditions. A lot of this work feels like it sort of goes on a bit under the radar, and I guess some of that's understandable because a lot of these things do happen in sort of closed off spaces. But equally, I suspect that there's a lot more, that there are plenty of places where this doesn't happen. So this is your chance to say, if we had the opportunity, what could this look like? How could your work benefit more people? What would need to happen?
So from our point of view, it's just getting ourselves out there, really, and people knowing about us. So, if there's anybody out there who would like us to come and do something for them, we will always say yes. We're always fundraising. But we can, and we're not a free service, but we will always help with fundraising and do what we can. I mean, in our ideal world, singing medicine would be available in every hospital in the country, if not the world, basically. I mean, we have worked in different children's hospitals around the country. We've worked in Great Ormond Street and Warwick, various places, Oxford. But, there are a lot of children's hospitals who don't have us or something similar. And we would love to be able to be everywhere, because all children should have access to that.
Merel, what about you? What does singing support for long COVID, what could it look like?
I would love for the long COVID clinics for the children to know about us. There are not many around. I think in Wales there are none, but there are definitely a few around in the UK, in England. I mean, sorry. And it would be great if they knew about us, and and GP practices, so that we're on a social prescribing list. That would be really, really great. I think I've definitely become better at showing that we're around on social media, but I think there's need to go beyond that as well.
There's that thing, isn't there, sort of bridging the sort of science of it with the practicality as well. So it might be the GP might think, oh well, I they might not think of the connection. But as you said, there's things like E&O Breathe that are starting to show how singing can have a direct medical benefit, isn't it?
Sally, it seems like it would be such an amazing thing if the work you do could be linked up with the long COVID clinics, that there are, I think, 6 across the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
And it'd be really interesting to see if there was some way that long COVID kids and that singing medicine could work together to sort of make inroads with these long COVID clinics, because given that there are 112,000 children with long COVID in the UK, and I think it's 2 million adults now have long COVID as well.
I know when we were still sort of coming in and out of the lockdowns, we did a series of films specifically for long COVID. They're on our website. But I think it would be really great.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to ask you as a final question something that we ask of all of our guests, which is to share a particularly inspirational vocal moment from your life. And that can either be someone else's experience of vocalizing or your own, or a mixture of both.
So this is quite a recent one, and it's one of the choir participants. Her mum sent me a little video and showing that this participant had, for the first time ever, sung in front of an audience and had the confidence to do so because of attending the choir. So that was a really wonderful moment for me, really.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow, brilliant. What about you, Sally?
It's a really hard question. I think, I'm singing in ExCathedra. I've sung in lots of beautiful concert halls and churches around the country and elsewhere. But I think probably slightly selfishly, my moment really was the moment when I dreamed up singing medicine, which was in Symphony Hall, with I don't know how many hundreds of children from schools doing a big singing session, and seeing all those children, feeling the buzz in the room, and that you could practically see the happy hormones flooding around, and thinking in that moment, the children I look after need this. And that's 20 years later, here we are.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
That's quite something to look back on, isn't it? And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm not an ideas person. I've always been very good at taking other people's ideas and running with them. So actually, this was my good idea in my life, I think.
Sally, I think it's safe to say you are an ideas person.
Well, that was it. There was only one. That was it. There's no more.
Well, on that inspiring note, a huge thank you to Sally and Merel for sharing your insights into this really fascinating and positive world, isn't it? The thing that you're doing, such wonderful benefits, and long may that work continue. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Inspiring voices, reflections.
Oh, I felt like it was really emotional
Yeah.
thinking about the situations that these people are in.
Yeah, and Sally's point is such a good one about how, they're disadvantaged anyway in so many ways. And then they're further disadvantaged because they can't access stuff like this that feels normal to everyone. And it will generally step out of the way of when kind of more serious medical needs are there, but to be viewed as a kind of a nice to have when the benefits are so clear, aren't they?
And actually the same can be said for the long COVID kids, is that, these young people, many of them, like she said, they can't go to school, or maybe if they do, they're only going for an hour a day, that they are really suffering and living in a really challenging situation where people don't even sometimes believe them, except obviously, like she said, their immediate families. And in the same way, you think, well, of course they should be able to access these sorts of opportunities. Of course they should be able to enjoy being in a choir with other kids.
Yeah. I was thinking about that from the point of view of there must be people who have, maybe in schools or whatever, who have young people with long COVID or with, post-viral things that affect them in different ways. But particularly, we know fatigue is a very common thing. And that thing of, once again, coming back to that flexibility of being able to recognize that, but not use that as a mechanism to say you can't take part, but to work out how you can. What I was really impressed with, and have been impressed from seeing it firsthand, is the skill that is involved when you have professionals doing that work, and the amazing way that they adapt to the situation, and can leave a bedside with a young person in a totally different place than when they arrived.
You and I both were at that session in Snape Maltings, and we were there for that singing workshop, and there was that amazing woman, June, who was talking about how important singing can be in like the beginning of life and the end of life, that there's this place for singing that's like an innate thing that humans have been doing since the beginning of time, that actually helps sort of herald people into their life and out of their life. And that's just so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, that takes a lot to be able to be involved in that, be able to kind of keep that professionalism whilst also having the kind of the warmth and the empathy.
And there is something so special about that. Some of those songs that are really kind of organically created sort of songs with people like weaving in harmonies at the different moments, and it's just really beautifully organic, and there is something so natural about it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Inspiring Voices. Please remember to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify.
Videos of each episode are also available on Sing Up Foundation YouTube channel. For more about us, and to access our library of resources or to donate to support our work, please visit www.singupfoundation.org.
Thanks to Becky Owen and The Refuge for our beautiful podcast music, specially arranged by Becky and adapted from her song Anemone.